Okay, the first part of making these barn doors is building up the stiles and rails. Again, as I mentioned in the SketchUp portion of this video, the way these doors are going to be put together is like a giant flat paneled cabinet door. I'm going to show you a few more advanced tools that we have here in the shop, but since I know all of you do not have, or lots of you do not have, planers and jointers and things like that in your shop, I'm going to show you some alternative ways to do it, which produces, very good results. Again, the average DIY or homeowner that comes and visits you to see all the tremendous work that you've done isn't going to notice the types of things that a serious professional, or even that you'll notice yourself because you're so up close on the work as you're building it. You tend to notice and focus on all of the defects. So believe me, not half of the stuff that you notice will ever be noticed in the lifetime of your build. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is start building the stiles and the rails, and I wanted to make sure that you could get this same material, that you don't have to have special 6-quarter or 8-quarter thick boards that you need a hardwood specialty store to go get. So I wanted to make sure you could get all of this at Home Depot, and or Menards or Lowe's or whatever. I have no affinity. So basically what we're going to do is we're just going to take 1x4s, and for the stiles and rails of these giant barn doors, we're just going to glue them together so that we have something that's 1.5 inches thick by 3.5 inches wide. And as you can see, I've got a myriad of clamps. I've glued up a bunch of these stiles and rails already. So I've got the last two here that we're going to do. Per the drawing that you saw in the Google SketchUp, we need to create the rails at least 85 inches tall. So we have some room to cut the ends off and clean everything up. And the rails are those are the stiles, and then the rails have to be, the overall size of the door is going to be 42 inches, but with 3.5 inches on each side taken up by the width of the stiles, we can take 7 inches off that 42 inches and basically create our stiles 35 inches or so. I always make them a little longer just so I have play if I need to, so we'll make ours about 36. So basically you're just going to glue up these long boards, and I'm going to do that right now, and really this is not rocket science at all. You just basically apply glue like very liberally, to these sides to one side of the door. You don't have to do it to both sides. And the modern glues of today are so strong. If you want to have a fun experiment just to see how strong they are, glue two boards together that are very straight and don't have any edge gap between their edges. Glue them together and clamp them up, and then try to break them apart. And what you'll see is, more often than not, the wood will split before the glue. Like, you won't get a clean break across your glue line. You'll get a split glue. You'll tear out some of the wood along the grain. So the glues are much stronger, and you really don't need much more than that. However, what you do need to do when you are gluing up these types of stiles and rails, as I spread it, is you need to make sure that the entire surface is coated. I don't always do this. I'm not always this careful to coat every millimeter of the surface or every inch of the surface. When I'm using screw fasteners along with the glue, but when I'm using glue only, I definitely try to get this stuff spread. So I just have like a little bit of a stirring stick here that I cut off of a paint stirrer or stain stirrer, and all I'm doing is spreading out the glue so that it's nice and even, and it's going to bleed out. It's going to bleed all over the place. You can see this table I'm going to have to clean up later, but it's definitely going to get out there. And so what I'm going to do is just, and if there's any like dry spots that you can't get spread out, just use a little bit more glue and get it thoroughly covered. And so let me get this done here. I tend not to use gloves when I use these glues, so it ends up getting all over me, and then I wipe it on my pants, and I swear to God, I go through a lot of pants. So again, if it's thin in some areas, just add a little bit of glue so that you can Get everything all really covered nicely. It doesn't have to be like an inch thick. You can still see the wood between it, but you know, you definitely want it covered. Okay, now that the glue is spread pretty much evenly across the entire board, what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, wipe this off because I've used this little glue spreader probably about 20 times and I haven't thrown it away. So I just kind of get the glue off there. And then what I'm going to do is just flip it over on top and set it up. Now, you're going to notice, because I didn't run these through a planer or a jointer beforehand, you're going to notice sometimes that the wood is not always exactly the same thickness. So you'll put the one piece on, it's not going to be as exactly the same thickness as the bottom piece, and so you're like, oh, I'm going to have this kind of nasty edge that's not flush on one side. And I'm going to show you how to take care of that. But what you want to try to do is line up the ends and at least get one side flush before you put your clamps on. So I'm going to do that. Now, you can use whatever kind of clamps you want, but essentially we're just trying to get this thing all put together. You're going to see a lot of glue squeeze out, which is again fine. I tend to do one on the direct edge, and I'm going to make the side that's closest to me flush. So let me flush that up, and then I can go ahead and tighten it down. And you're going to see sometimes these boards are, you know, they're a little wobbly or they curve off a little, they're a little warped or something like that. Again, that's fine too. There's ways to deal with all of that. Alright, and I'll show you some of them. We have more sophisticated tools that I think I said that I'm going to expose you to, but, you know, again, it's like yoga class. Like I took a yoga class, I'm awful at yoga, but they always give the less advanced students, namely me, they give you something to do in place of, you know, the more advanced exercises. So in the shop, we're going to try to do the same thing. So now, I'm not going to go like down like this, you know, all the way. I'm going to put a clamp like somewhere kind of in the middle-ish, maybe a little bit toward the one end, just so I can kind of keep it flush at a, I don't know, macro level, I guess I would say. And then I'll put another one here, you know, kind of not quite at the end, but a little bit further down. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to fill in a bunch of clamps, so you'll see, so that we don't have any gaps into this thing. But again, I'm just making sure that this edge that's closest to me is flush. And sometimes it takes a couple of tries, which is, you know, fine. This guy doesn't want to give. Okay, and then I really like these clamps. I mean, I have these other ones, these Bessie clamps that are really good, but these Jorgensen little clamps are ratcheting clamps, and they're really nice. Again, I don't have any affinity. I'll use whatever I feel is the best to do. You know, and so I'm not beholden to anyone, so I can make better recommendations. You know, I don't want to be sponsored by, I mean, it would be nice to be sponsored, I guess you get shit paid for, but I don't want to be sponsored and then have to like protect the person I'm using just because, you know, I mean, if their product sucks, it sucks, so whatever. Okay. Oh, we got a little movement here, that's fine. And then you just want to check, you know, the flushness on some of these parts. All right, and then again, I'm just going to go through this and just start clamping down in between the clamps that I have already put in place. Okay, I like these C clamps too. You know, these are really nice. I don't know, Hart makes these, I guess. You know, there is a rule, an unwritten rule, I guess, in woodworking is, you know, you can't have enough clamps in the shop. And on projects like this, where you do a lot of glue ups, that is true. Okay. All right, a couple more down here, and then I think this will be good. Okay. One of the reasons that I don't plane and put these through a jointer before I glue them up is because it's very difficult when you got two surfaces that keep wanting to move on top of each other because the glue is you know, slippery when before it sets up. Why would I go through the trouble of planing everything and putting a jointed edge on one side only to make a mistake later on and have these things not lined up, and then I'm going to have to do it again. So this one is done. I got these all set up. I'm going to basically go ahead and glue up. I've glued up most of them already. I've got one more here to glue up, and then we'll be done with all the stiles and rails. But for you seeing this the first time, all you have to do is put these together. It may take a few days because you want to let these things dry before you take off the glue. You want them to at least, or take off the clamps, you want them to dry at least, you know, 4 hours on this thing to let them set up really, really good. As a matter of fact, I try to leave them on overnight. So leave yourself plenty of time. Don't give yourself a short deadline like trying to make something in time for Christmas and then realize, oh my God, I've got to let all these things dry overnight. So I'm going to go ahead and glue up this second one, and if you're doing this video at home, you can go ahead and glue up all the rest of your stiles and rails, and then we'll come back and we'll start gluing up the panels.